Hello and welcome. I'm Joy Williamson-Lott, Dean of the University of Washington Graduate School, home of the Office of Public Lectures. I want to thank you for joining us for the Graduate School Digital Series, Sexually Speaking, with UW's very own Dr. Pepper Schwartz. In this 5-part short series, Dr. Schwartz will answer questions on love, relationships, and of course, sex. There should be a little something for everyone, we hope. And now a little bit about Dr. Schwartz. Dr. Pepper Schwartz is professor of sociology at the University of Washington. She received her BA and MA from Washington University in St. Louis and her PhD from Yale University. She is past president of the Society for the Scientific Study of Sexualities and past president of the Pacific Sociological Association. The American Sociological Association has given her the award for Public Understanding of Sexuality and the Simon and Gagnon Award for Distinguished Work on Sexualities. She is the author of 25 books and over 50 academic articles. She was the Love, Sex, and Relationship Ambassador for the AARP for over a decade, and for the last 7 years has appeared as a relationship expert on the Lifetime television program Married at First Sight. Thank you for joining us and enjoy the show.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Pepper Schwartz. I'm so glad to be here to answer your questions. I would like to add that if the questions are about relationships or sexual functioning, I generally am happy to answer any one of those. If they're questions that have medical elements to them where I don't feel qualified, I'm not a physician, and I think some questions really require someone who's a specialist in the endocrine system or something like that, I am going to defer on those questions, and if they come in, I might just say something, go see a doctor, because that wouldn't be something I feel I have the research experience to comment on. If you're having trouble with your penis, if there's pain in any way, if it's new, lack of sensation, or pain in terms of how your penis fits when you walk or do any kind of exercise, get yourself to a doctor. Don't accept any pain as ordinary. It could be there could be so many explanatory things going on that are dangerous. And remember, your penis is part of your body. It's not like a little black box that, functions of itself. It's connected to the nerves of your body, the blood system of your body. Sometimes when men are having trouble with erection, it means their heart is not pumping blood effectively. So you're not having something that's just annoying. You're having something that's a symptom you need to check out. Just remember that if there's pain, if there's anything going on down there, this needs to be attended to, not suffered. Hormone replacement for postmenopausal women makes some women's life livable. I mean, people can have no symptoms as they stop menstruating. I mean, literally none. Or they can have these extraordinary things like, sweats where you're pouring sweat, or they can't sleep at night, or they are a nervous wreck, or real not made up symptoms that are harsh and interrupt their goodwill, and they can have mood swings and all kinds of stuff. And for a lot of those women, hormone replacement is a godsend. But you need a doctor to talk to you about what else is going on in your body, if that hormone replacement is dangerous to you or not. because for some women, particularly women who've had some experiences with cancer, etc., that are estrogen is involved, where you need to be on low or no estrogen, you need to talk to a doctor. But hormone replacement, oh my God, there's been volumes of debate over this. So I can't really tread too far into those waters without, coming up to the need for medical interpretation. But by all means, you can do a lot of reading about it. God knows the internet can mislead you. Try to do it through medical journals and through medical, physician to physician, as you look online, as opposed to, sort of ideological debates on one side or the other. This hormone replacement is a very individual experience. And so you need the doctor who really knows your body well to help advise you about whether this is the right thing for you. It's very common among postmenopausal women, and sometimes women who still do menstruate, to lubricate less and less as they get older. Lubrication can also dry up on anything else that dries you up for other reasons. For example, if you're taking antihistamines or allergy drugs that dry you up, it doesn't just dry up your nose. So if you're not lubricating, you're going to be doing skin against skin in a way that's going to be abrasive, it's going to hurt, and it's going to make you think like it isn't worth it. Furthermore, if somebody enters you vigorously that way or plunges in towards a bumping against the cervix, you can have some real serious pain. And you aren't going to want to have sex under those circumstances. And I think most male or female partners would not want you to be feeling pain. That's not what sex is supposed to be about. So there's a couple things you can do. You can get estrotest from your doctor, which is an estrogen testosterone mix that's used for menopausal women. And it can be topical. Even if you've had, this is the kind of, I can't answer purely medical questions because I'm not a doctor and I don't know the confluence of one situation and how it would affect another, and that you might have consequences from one drug versus another that I wouldn't have no idea about. But estrotest is something to at least inquire with the doctor. You could take a look at topical estrogens, which usually get absorbed by the skin and the vagina right there and do not enter, supposedly, to ask your doctor, the bloodstream. So even if you've had a brush with cancer or something like that, it may be allowable. And then there are just other kinds of lubricants that, you might have to slather on internally as well as externally, not to feel that abrasiveness that makes it painful. And if your partner is plunging into you very deeply and it hurts, you've got nerves at the end of the cervix, that's what he's hitting, then you have to say, look at, get positions, etc., that allow you to control how deeply and how vigorously that's happening. The important thing is to be honest with your partner and to both of you say, okay, let's figure out how to fix this. You might want to go to a doctor who is specialized in sexual medicine. In Seattle, Serena McKenzie is a medically trained person who can take a look at that kind of problem. Your own internist, etc., may not be something they're confident about. Maybe they can recommend you to somebody that they use for these kinds of problems. But you do not have to feel pain. You can do things to get rid of it. It is not a necessary sadness of postmenopausal life. It can be helped. It's a good question. I think we know a lot more about sex. We have many more permissions and many more resources than when I first started talking about it. When I first started studying sex, it was, and professionally, it was in the late 60s, early 70s. There, it wasn't hard to be original and creative because there was so little else going on. Whole idea of sexual identity, almost nothing on gay men or gay women, much less bisexuality. Very little on how it functioned in relationships. Kinsey was more kind of numerical and trying to understand what was happening. And Masters and Johnson, early work was really on sexual biological functioning and very little about how it integrated into people's lives and couples' lives. So what a great way it was to sort of be a pioneer in a field that is so core and elemental in people's happiness and lives. So there's so many more great voices now than there were, so much more research, particularly on sexual minorities and gender minorities. I think it's much more 10,000 flowers bloom than it was. But oddly enough, it's still not enough information out for people as they're going through their most queering years. Young gay men and young gay women don't get enough information, are often in communities that are not supportive. And I think people, even in the majority, the heterosexuals, they're not getting what they need to know in terms about understanding their bodies and the permissions that they get to decide on and should be the ones who decide on. I often think that young people are having sex way earlier than their psychological maturity, and so there's a lot to regret or hasn't been done in ways that when they look back they feel good about. I mean, I've always wanted to think of sexuality as a gift and a privilege and a great experience, and there's so many stories that are contrary to that obviously we're not doing our job if sex still is a tale of frustration or abuse. Me Too, we had to come along way after it was needed, and still is trying to shape what's an expectation. How does a man know what's wanted and what isn't wanted? How does a woman stand up for herself and say where her boundaries are and act and feel empowered by that? It's not like it's this rosy world now, but it's much, much better in terms of the dialogue and the resources and the protections than we had so many years ago. I know this is going to sound funny coming from me, but I think sometimes the most harmful misconception about sex from the younger crowd is that it's no big deal. Hook up and that's fun, but there are a lot of hormones that create attachment to people that you have a successful sex night with. I do think that I'm not a prude. I think one night stands can be exciting. I get it. Why people would love to have sexual adventures and adventures only. But I am seeing a lot of people, particularly through Married at First Sight, where they're burnt out by 25. I mean, they've had too many people reject them, or too many, ghosting experiences, or not doing well in the swipe right and left culture. And I go like, we have more tender hearts and more tender egos than I sometimes think we understand. And so I think the biggest thing is to understand that there's some wear and tear of all these sexual adventures. And by the time we get people, they are, they've got walls up forever because they don't feel lovable, or don't feel like somebody wants to attach to them. So I think that's the biggest thing, that people feel like, they can handle all this and that it's not going to have an impact on their lives. I think you have to kind of see what's really you. And the whole idea that oral sex is less intimate than intercourse, that's one that's taken me a while to understand, because I always thought that was a very intimate thing, but a lot of times people trade that like, that's a one-off, no big deal. Again, I think it's sexual, and anything that's sexual draws you in, often soul as well as body. It's not sloughed off. It's just a passing adventure as much as you might think. So that's my 2 cents. Well, I would would love to have same-sex couples on Married at First Sight. I truly would. A lot of my research has been involved with sexual spectrum, normally on sexual identity and practice as opposed to gender, but a lot of research on that. I have interviewed hundreds and hundreds of gay couples for my research. I love the idea of being able to pick a partner for a gay man or a lesbian or even two people who are fluid. And I mean, that may be a little tougher just figuring out, what's the right place in the spectrum they would like, but it's a challenge I'd love to have. And by the way, my two co-experts on the show also feel the way I do too. However, I think with TV, they often think if it's not broke, don't fix it. In other words, it's working. We have a big audience. We have a track record. They haven't shown much interest in changing the things that are working for us now. Would I say it could happen in the future? I think it could. I think one thing we've had to change some of our the way we do things because of COVID-19. Where we would bring large groups of men and women separately in and interview them separately in person. Now we do that by Zoom, and so we have to do it individually in a way that we probably could do with gay men and gay women. Part of it might involve we need to be in a city with a lot of gay men and a lot of gay women, because remember, it's marriage at first sight. They can't have seen each other or been with each other before. So that brings up, you could see logistical things, but logistical things could be solved. So I hope sometime in the future we do have same-sex couples to make. I don't get tired about talking about sexuality because that's so much tied into identity and into one's pleasure or displeasure with life and relationships. I can get tired of, how does tab A and slot B work together, or tab A and tab A and, tab B and tab B. I mean, I think the mechanics of sex are a whole lot less interesting, not that they're not important, but less interesting than how it affects people, how it affects a relationship, how differences or similarities in sexuality pull people together or break them apart. But it's a core issue in people's lives over the whole life cycle. In fact, one of the areas I wish we talked more about sex is people's sex lives after 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. People start to giggle the older ages I talk about, but I think it's really important. Part of embrace and vitality in our connection is that we remain sexual people with one another. And actually, there's a professorship that's being done in my name in the University of Minnesota, and why it's there is just because there's a big donor who set a floor of millions of dollars to help put these professorships together in the medical school at that university. But the professorship in my name is on sexuality and aging, or sexuality in the life cycle, so that we don't say, okay, the last information someone needs about sex is when they're 12, or let's be generous, 18 or 21. We need it throughout the life cycle. We need to encourage and enable people to be sexual beings, until they are unable physically or mentally to want that. And I just believe that discussion has yet to be had.